Chapter 17, Siblings. A girl dressed in an ornate white dress flitted across the room as she announced her arrival. "Anna? What are you doing here?" Alexander exclaimed. He didn't expect to see Anna so soon. As Anna ambled toward him, Alexander studies her and noticed a remarkable change in her appearance. Last week, she was this frail young lady, bedridden for almost her life ever since she got afflicted by tuberculosis. He also recalls the time when her voice carried weakness and weariness. Now, she's carelessly walking around the palace and probably giving the servants a hard time. "I came here to visit you," she said as she stopped in front of his desk. She eyed the sparse documents and files over his desk before returning her attention to him. "You seemed to be working hard, dear brother. This is the first time in my life seeing you giving efforts in your work," she said teasingly. "It's only natural for the successor to the throne to work hard on its constituents. Anyways, why are you even here? You should be resting in your bedroom. Do Dmitri know you're here?" Geez, brother. Aren't you that excited to see me in my normal state? Look." She did a little twirl. Her dress swished up as it whirled, showing off her graceful movements. Alexander slowly leans over the table and set his head on his palm as he looks at his sister, his expression serious. Anna growled, seeing that his brother didn't give a reaction at all. "What's with that face, brother? Do you really not that happy to see me?" Her eyes moistened as if she were going to cry. Alexander averted his gaze from his sister. He knew that if he looks at her for a second longer, he would be possessed by the irrational behavior of the original prince, who would be tempted to hug her. Although Thomas is the one controlling most of the functions of the body, when it comes to family, he would be vulnerable. Which baffled him from the start. Does the real Prince Alexander really dead or alive? Still, he can't let her have that gloomy look. He formulated an explanation in his head to make her understand that he didn't mean it in the way that she thinks. "Anna, look, I'm happy that you can now walk and enjoy yourself, but I'm concerned about your health. You're still not completely cured of tuberculosis. It would take another 3 to 6 months to fully remove the bacterium off your system." "I know that, brother. I just wanted to show you that I'm feeling better," Anna reasoned. Alexander sighed and closed his eyes, thinking how a real Alexander would handle this situation. Searching through his memories, he found one. What? Do siblings interact like that? It was a gesture to calm Anna down and make her happy. He has no choice but to resort to it. He cleared his throat before offering something. "Anna, do you want to? Ugh, this is embarrassing. Sit on my lap." Anna's eyes lit up with excitement after hearing that. "Really?" she said with a cherubic face. "I have no you." Before he can offer an explanation, Anna hopped onto his knee. She playfully giggles as she grinds her rear on his lap and wiggles into place, snuggling herself on his chest, sniffing him. A wave of discomfort ran throughout his body at the sudden action of his little sister, questioned himself again. Is this how siblings interact? Still, the goal has been achieved. It calmed her and soothed her, making her happy. As long as it is achieved, nothing else matters. Although he found this to be somehow uncomfortable, he still let her do her thing. "What are you doing today, brother?" Anna picked one of the files on his brother's table and read it. "Education, reform? What's this, brother?" "It's one of the 100 things I'm currently doing," Alexander answered simply. "Our education system is exclusive only to the nobility, resulting in a low illiteracy rate, especially among the peasantry. Now, according to the data I read while I was browsing for information about our country, there are 25 million peasants living in Ruthenia Empire. That means 25 million people can't read or write." "That's a huge number," Anna gasped. "I can read and write, brother." "You're part of the royal family, hence an upper class, so it's only natural that you can read and write. But those people out there can't simply because they were born out of it. Those 25 million peasants can affect our economy drastically. If we utilize them by giving them the basic ability to read and write, it can turn things upside down." "How, brother?" Anna asked curiously. "In this modern world, in order to get a job, 2 basic requirements is required. An ability to read and write. Imagine if a person can't do those, they will only end up with limited options. They can either go back to farming or become factory workers whose job is to do a thing repeatedly for the rest of their life. But imagine those people armed with knowledge. They can change their lives and the lives of countless people around them. They can be doctors, teachers, architects, or engineers. They can be anything. That is why I'm going to push for an educational reform that will extend classes for peasants for free. That's amazing, brother. I wonder why our father didn't approve of it. Alexander didn't answer that. The reason was simple: the Roman Orf doesn't want the mass to learn, as it can change the social fabric of Ruthenia and possibly earn knowledge that can be used as their weapon to overthrow the ruling dynasty. He sees an educated mass as a threat to his rule. Not only his father but his grandfather as well. I will implement it as soon as possible. Not only did I make education for free, but I also ordered the construction of new schools to accommodate the population. Not only he will push for education reform, but he also planned to implement labor rights, the Child Protection Act that will end child labor, tax reforms, land reforms, agricultural reforms, and other huge reforms that will greatly affect the citizens' life. For him, the only way to catch up with the superpowers of Europe is to modernize socially, economically, militarily, and technologically. As the two siblings continued their moments where Alexander is reading her documents and teaching her about the bureaucracy of the government, two beautiful women dressed in casual attire showed up on his doorsteps. "Brother, we're ready to leave." "Anastasia?" Christina gasped. "Anna? What are you doing here? Shouldn't you be in your room? And why are you sitting on Alexander's lap?" Tiffany questioned. "What's wrong with it? Brother offered me to sit on his lap because he knew that I wanted to do it," Anna said cheekily. Hearing that, Tiffany's expression darkened. She shot a glaring look at her brother and said, "Alexander, you creep, pervert, lowlife, scum, shameless man." After her aunt, Alexander was struck silent. Is this the girl who cried because of Anna's condition? Instead of thanking her brother who saved Anna, he received nothing but a curse. She must have clearly misunderstood the situation. "Oi sister, you shouldn't be talking to a brother like that." Anna sat up and chided her best friend. "Humph," Tiffany harumphed as she averted her gaze away from Alexander. "Anyways, where do you plan of going?" "We're going out to visit the hospitals, factories, the city," Christina answered. "Why are you here anyway?" "Why is everyone asking why I'm here?" she complained hotly. "Am I not allowed to walk around the palace where I live?" "You should be in your room resting." "Did you sneak out of your room?" Christina asked as she pulled her sister's ear. Anna winced in pain. "Ouch. Let go of my ear, sister." "Only if you behave." "Fine," Anna relented. Christina's eyes flickered to Alexander. "So brother, are you ready to leave?" "The car's ready." "Can I come?" Anna asked. "No." Christina and Tiffany intoned together. "Or." Anna looked down sadly. "It's for your own benefit. Brother said you're not completely cured," Christina explained. "Plus the trip will be tiresome for you," Tiffany added. "You must stay and rest here." "Don't worry, once you're okay, you can come with us." "Is that a promise?" Anna questioned, looking up at her sisters. "Yeah, it's a promise," Christina said with a motherly smile. "All right. I'll wait for you here. Take care of yourselves." "We will," Christina and Tiffany said in chorus. Anna waved her hand at her older siblings as she left the room, leaving only Alexander, Christina, and Tiffany in the office. Alexander sorted the documents scattered on his desk and piled them neatly. After that, he stood up, straightened his tie, and buttoned his suit jacket. Let's go. Chapter 18. New personnel. 30 minutes earlier, 500 meters away from the Winter Palace, an edifice known as the General Staff Building that served as the home of the military headquarters of the Ruthenia Empire. A man strides through the hallways of the military headquarters. His name is Roland Makarov. The man stood at an astonishing height of 6 feet 6 inches. His build was well muscled, but his frame was lean. He wore an impeccably tailored black three-piece suit that left no detail of his frame untouched. Gold hair was slicked back and fell in a wave over one side of his face, giving him a rugged, careless look. A square jaw and a set of cold blue eyes completed the ruggedly handsome look. His skin was pale white and his eyes were sharp like steel and looked as though they could see straight through everything. His body seemed to sparkle with power, strength, and authority. His name is Colonel Roland Makarov. During the Ruther-Angorian War that happened 15 years ago, he was feared as Ruthenia's master close combat combatant. He was known as the Reaper. Arriving at his destination, he knocked on the door. Moments later, the door opened and a civilian man peeked his head out of the door. Upon seeing who it is, he waved him in. The 50-year-old man looked like a scholar. He was wearing a pair of round glasses and a black suit. Colonel Makarov, it is an honor to meet a war hero such as you. The man exclaimed. Excitement was evident in his voice. The honor is mine, sir. If you don't mind me asking, why did you call me here? Oh, straight to the point, huh? I like it. The man walked to his desk. He opened up a drawer and took out an envelope. He handed the envelope to the colonel. What's this? Roland asked as he tore open the envelope and emptied the contents. He saw a reassignment paper. You know about the current issues in Imperial family of Ruthenia, right? Yes, I heard it in the newspaper. The Emperor and the Queen were killed in an explosion thrown by a syndicate known as the Black Hand. Though they succeeded in killing the head of the Empire, they failed to kill the heir apparent, His Imperial Majesty, Alexander Romanov. I believe he will be crowned as the new emperor in, I don't know, did they announce the date? The Minister of the Imperial Court hasn't made an announcement, but I believe it will happen soon. You'll be reassigned as the head of the Imperial Guard tasked with guarding His Majesty effective immediately. The news shocked the colonel. Are you serious, sir? You're putting me as the head of the Imperial Guard? He asked in disbelief. The man nodded. Our new emperor is a rather progressive man who has made progressive reforms such as transitioning from autocracy to constitutional monarchy, promised radical reforms, and implemented policies to ensure that the welfare of the citizenry will be protected. These policies and reforms sparked outrage from conservative politicians, nobles, and the aristocracy who feared that these reforms will threaten their power and influence in the government. Because of this, we have a reason to believe that there will be a plot to assassinate our new head of state. In addition, the Black Hand still lurks in the shadows within our country's borders, constantly threatening his life. We need someone loyal to the crown, a man who will protect the prince with his life. And we believe you're the right person for that kind of job. Roland was speechless. He didn't know what to say. He was deep in thought. Are you refusing? No, sir, I am not. Roland snapped back to reality and answered without hesitation. I will accept this assignment, and I'll protect the prince with my life as I believe it is the greatest honor I can ever have. I believe so too, Colonel. The man smiled. Now head there to the royal palace immediately. The prince along with the two princesses, Her Imperial Highnesses Christina and Tiffania, are planning to go on a trip. You'll be debriefed as soon as you arrive there. Roland pocketed the files inside the manila envelope and saluted. Back in the present time, Alexander, Christina, and Tiffany were walking out of the door towards the state car. Alexander's eyes wandered around the contour of the vintage car. Based on the exterior design, the windows, and the number of seats inside, he deduced that the car in front of them is strikingly similar to that of a 1931 Daimler 6640-50. The side door of the car opened as a tall man exited. The first thing that caught the prince's attention was the man's height. Standing at a staggering height of 6 feet 6 inches. He is 18 centimeters taller than him. Alexander was not the only one who was shocked by the man's height, even Christina and Tiffany were overwhelmed. Your Majesty, the man spoke as he kneeled in front of him. I'm Roland Smeryakov. As of today, I'll be your head of security, he said with a solemn bow. Ah, so you're the one, huh? You were already informed, sir? Yes, he confirmed. After all, I'm the one who requested from the general staff for a security detail. Is that so? Roland let out a chuckle and stood up. His eyes flickered to the two Grand Duchesses who were looking at him with their heads up. He let out a smile as he placed a hand on his chest and bowed. Your Imperial Highnesses, it is a pleasure to meet you. The two princesses gracefully bowed in return. So, shall we head out? Roland nodded. He opened the car door for Alexander and the princesses. He closed the door after the three of them got in. The prince sat in the middle and the two princesses sat on his sides. Roland sat at the front. Your Imperial Majesty, Roland spoke to Alexander as the chauffeur starts the engine. Where should we go first? The city hospital number 41st, then to the Kirov plant, Alexander answered as he leans back in his seat. He wiggled between the two as he found it difficult to find a comfortable position. Understood, Roland acknowledged and pulled out a map, then turns his attention to the chauffeur. We will take this route. Yes, sir. In the back seat. A little cramped, isn't it? Tiffany suddenly blurted out. Can you move a little bit to the right, Alexander? With a moment's hesitation, he moved to the right as carefully as possible, trying not to hurt Christina. That's better, Tiffany commented. A short silence fell upon them as the car slowly drove through the busy streets of the capital city. Peering through the windows, Alexander observed the scenery outside the car. He saw a plethora of automobiles, trucks, and motorcycles. People were walking and going about their business in the streets. He also noticed the presence of grandiose Baroque and neoclassical edifices which were still in use, as well as the abundance of old and classical buildings. He hasn't been to St. Petersburg in his past world, but it sure gives a similar vibe and look. Meanwhile, in the front seat, Roland was studying the surroundings just like a commander investigating the topography of a battlefield. There could be an enemy nearby that could pose a threat to the convoy, so he's watching out for that. Fortunately, they didn't run into any unexpected obstacles, so the state car arrived at the city hospital without incident. Here we are, Your Majesty, Roland announced. Alexander thanked him and stepped out of the car, then headed to the front entrance with his two sisters and a security detail dressed in black suits, with Roland issuing out orders to his men to stay on high alert. The reason for them coming here is to check the condition of the people who marched on August 1st who suffered injuries and heat stroke. This is just a simple gesture, but if people who will witness him inside spread the word that he visited them personally, he'll gain a lot of support from the people. Simply put, this is just a photo opportunity for him. Though this sounded like politics, it wasn't his only intention. This is also his chance to learn more about the people. Chapter 19, Learning About the People Part 1. Inside the hospital, three hospital personnel clad in white coats approached them. It's an honor to meet you, Your Majesty, Your Imperial Highnesses. The older of the two, who introduced himself as Dr. Mikhail Petrovich, bowed in front of Alexander and the princesses. I am the chief doctor, Dr. Mikhail Petrovich. This is Olga Ivanovna, our nurse, and Dr. Andrei, our chief radiologist. Alexander shook the hands of each of them. It's an honor to meet you as well. A short silence fell upon them as every individual found themselves in a unique situation. They gasped inwardly as they looked at their hands. A royal prince's hand just touched theirs, a memory that will remain with them for the rest of their lives. Are you here to see the people who marched last to the Winter Palace? Dr. Mikhail Petrovich asked. That's correct, Alexander confirmed as he nodded. I would like to thank them personally for making me realize the current state of my country. I'm honored by your compassionate words, Your Majesty. Mikhail bowed once again, showing his heartfelt gratitude. If you would be so kind as to follow me, I'll show you to their wards. That's great. The trio followed the doctors to the wards where the patients were resting. A harsh stench of disinfectant filled the air inside the ward. The walls, floor, and ceiling are painted in a dull white color to give off a clean impression. Sunlight seeped through the translucent glass window which filled the room with a warm glow. There were beds arranged in rows and columns, with each of them filled with patients lying on the bed, resting on their own. The moment they stepped inside, all heads turned and faced them. The trio was greeted with worried and curious gazes from patients. The first thing that caught their eyes was their expensive-looking outfits. Then realization struck them. The royal family is here in person. Some gaped in awe while others kept their eyes glued to them in disbelief. They soon walked to the innermost part of the room while the head of the patients followed their elegant walk with awestruck eyes. So these are all the patients from the March, Doctor? Alexander glanced over his shoulder as he asked a question. "Yes, your majesty," Mikhail responded, bowing his head. The others were already discharged as soon as their condition stabilized. "I see." He looked down at the patients who were shooting them with a dumbfounded stare. Their stares are giving him an awkward vibe. However, not all of them were staring at the emperor. Most of the men inside have their eyes fixed on the princesses behind the supreme ruler. Christina and Tiffany bashfully wandered their eyes around the ward, avoiding eye contact as if they were shied away from the attention, causing the male patients inside to have their hearts skip a beat. Noticing that this is becoming awkward, Alexander broke the silence. "How are you guys? Are you all doing okay?" Immediately, the patients were taken aback by his question. The first one who recovered was a young man in his early 20s who was wearing a bandage over his forearm. "We're fine," he answered, looking at his bed as if he was trying to avoid eye contact. Alexander approached the young man and knelt down until his face was level with the man's and looked into his eyes. However, the man refused to make eye contact with the young Imperial Prince, believing it would be preposterous for him to have a face-to-face talk with the sovereign himself. "You participated in the Winter Palace March, am I right?" The young man nodded as he stuttered his response. "Why yes, your majesty." He breathed shakily and still refused to look at him. Alexander sighed and glanced at his two sisters. He tilts his head, beckoning them to talk to others. The Grand Duchess bowed and turned to their heels as they approached the patients and chatted with them. Seeing that, Alexander shifted his attention back to the man. "You know, you can look at me." "Can I, really?" the man inquired apprehensively. "Of course, I don't really mind the formality. In fact, I hated it." Alexander jested. Then, slowly, the man's head turned towards him, and his shaky eyes met the unwavering look of the Imperial Prince. "May I know your name, sir?" "My name is Sebastian." "Nice to meet you, Sebastian. May I know the reasons why you participated in the march?" Because. Sebastian's throat became dry and his voice became husky. Alexander could already know his answer judging from the man's eyes. They were tired of the emperor's tyrannical rule and they wanted a change. "You have nothing to fear, I won't censure you for anything you will say. In fact, I will welcome it with an open heart." The man was silent upon hearing that. He breathed heavily as if garnering confidence within him and spoke. "Because I wanted to change the fate of my siblings." "Your siblings?" Alexander asked, his eyebrow rising slightly. "Why yes, my little sister and my brother," he responded, his tone a little bit firmer. "I want to give them a better life, and a brighter future." His voice slightly trembled as he spoke. However, it became firmer as time passes. "In this country, when you were born a peasant, you will live as a peasant, and die as a peasant. It's like our fate is preordained, like we're destined to serve those who were privileged because they were born into it." Alexander was speechless after Sebastian's dry delivery of his tirade. Sebastian continued. "I want to change that. The thought that my siblings will end up like me in the future is something that I am scared of. I don't want that to happen. They deserve a better future." Alexander listened attentively with rapt attention, his expression was passive as he absorbs his words. He was about to say something when Sebastian continued. "This country has taken our rights to dream, our rights to pursue happiness, and our rights to something better. This continuous cycle of abuse has to end," he concluded. Alexander received those words with firm resolve. His eyes turned towards his two sisters who were deep in conversation with the patients. Each of the patients here desires something, and the most common of which is to make their life better. Alexander made a quick glance at his appearance and noticed that there was a missing finger on his right hand. "What happened to your finger?" Alexander asked directly. "Ah, this?" He looked at his right hand. "It happened when I was working at the factory. I was operating a lathe and my fingers accidentally slipped." He laughed gloomily as he described his accident. "Even though I was clearly injured, the factory owner didn't even give me any compensation. He said that I should be the one paying for it." He recalled his painful memories as he narrated his story. "At that moment, I feared that I might lose my job and won't be able to provide for the needs of my siblings." Alexander nodded, understanding what the man was going through. An empathetic expression grew on his face. I see. The more he listened to the stories of the people, the more it became depressing. Is this the current state of the Ruthenian Empire? It has to change. I see. Thank you for sharing your story with me. I really appreciate it. I want you to know that I'm listening to my people. I will do my best to fulfill everyone's wish. Sebastian felt at ease when he heard the prince's words. Tears welled up in his eyes. At last, someone from the higher authority who cared to listen to their stories. He bowed deeply in respect. Thank you, Your Majesty. Alexander stood up and watched his two sisters happily conversing with the patients. It was heartwarming. The mood in the ward was pleasantly buoyant, the patients felt relaxed and they felt like they could really talk to the royal family. Alexander beckoned the doctor to come with his finger. Mikhail walked forward. Their medical bills hadn't been paid yet, am I right? He whispered softly so that only Mikhail could hear him. Not yet. How about those who were discharged? Mikhail shook his head. They don't have the money to pay for the medical bills, but we were told by Father Georgie that you will pay for their treatment. That's quite right. Sorry for the delay, I will take care of this immediately. I will pay for their medical fees as I've promised to Father and a compensation. Your Highness, I'm deeply grateful for your generosity. Mikhail bowed deeply. He felt a little bit of burden being lifted off his shoulders. Afterward, the royal family continued talking to the patients individually, listening to their stories. Each has a common wish, a chance for a better life. As the sun's hue streaming through the windows turned orange, they left the hospital, carrying hundreds of stories with them. Outside of the hospital, Alexander and his two sisters entered the car. Inside, they shared their experiences with one another as they headed towards another location, which is a mechanical engineering manufacturing plant. I never felt so sad after hearing their stories, Christina remarked. Me too, added Tiffania. Talking to them made me realize how lucky we are. I still can't believe it, that the people in the Empire are suffering to that extent. It aches my heart, Christina stated as she shakes her head. Alexander remained silent as he listened to their conversation, not wanting to interfere with their lovely chat. He looked outside the window, trying to see the bigger picture of what this country needs. Looks like I will have to work thrice as hard, he thought to himself. His mind races with ideas and solutions to fix the mess he inherited from his predecessors. Good thing that he was able to quell the people by giving them hope he now has to meet. Creator's thoughts. Sorry I'm just diamond, sorry I'm just diamond. Creation is hard, cheer me up with those juicy power stones. Oh, in case you haven't noticed, there is an auxiliary chapter in the auxiliary tab where you can see the basic info about the characters and the setting of the story. Make sure to read that out. In case I forgot something or you wish to add, feel free to drop it at the comment section below. Those pictures are not mine, they only serves as a reference so that when you read this story, you'll imagine the character I posted there. Chapter 20, Learning About the People Part 2. As the sun slowly disappears behind the horizon, the city looked like a glittering jewel, with buildings adorned with beautiful lights. The imperial family was currently on its way to the largest manufacturing plant in the capital city, the Kirov plant. The Kirov plant is a major Ruthenian mechanical engineering and agricultural machinery manufacturing plant in St. Petersburg, Ruthenia. The imposing structure loomed in front of them, its bright lights shining in the darkness. The convoy stopped at the main entrance, and the imperial family got out of the car. The security of the imperial family spread out, setting up a defensive perimeter around them. The chief of security, Roland, walked alongside the imperial family as they walked towards the entrance. His eyes studied the surroundings of the Kirov plant, assessing a possible threat, and if there is, formulate an escape plan, and execute it at the soonest time possible. Luckily, such elements were not present, indicating that the place is safe and there are no known threats, for now. Roland hoped inwardly, that no such situation arises. Alexander and his sisters entered the premise and they were greeted by the workers. The workers of the manufacturing plant surrounded them, eagerly waiting to meet the imperial family. Apparently, they had been informed beforehand that the imperial family will visit their plant. Alexander scanned each of the factory workers as he passed by them. Normally, they'd look dirty with an oil stain all over their hands. But, they are surprisingly clean, like they haven't started working yet. Is it because of the announcement that the imperial family visiting the factory plant and they have to look presentable to their visitors? It seemed to be the case. As they walked past the line of factory workers, a man dressed in an expensive suit approached the imperial family and greeted them with respect. "Your Majesty." He bowed. "It's a great honor to have you visit us. We are humbled to have your presence here." Alexander reciprocated politely. "Thank you for the warm reception. I am very glad to be here. I am confident that your Majesty will be pleased with our manufacturing plant. I'll personally take you on a tour. It will be my pleasure. But first thing, sir, you will have to wear this during your tour. It is a safety protection gear." The manager's attaché handed the imperial family safety glasses and face masks. The trio donned the safety gear and was ready to tour. The factory manager took the lead as they walked around the manufacturing plant. When they arrived at the manufacturing area, they were greeted by a loud clanking noise. They walked up the stairs to the second floor, where they could view the entire manufacturing process. Alexander raises his eyebrows. He was pleasantly surprised by the array of machines and the huge assembly line. "So this is how the manufacturing plant looked like in the past, huh?" Alexander muttered under his breath. Although the factory looked impressive, it looked untidy and messy. The smell of the lubricating oil wafting in the air struck his nose while the rattling of the machines producing cacophonous noise drilled his ears, and the somewhat foggy smoke billowing from the machines irritates his eyes. It's dark, gloomy, and depressing. No wonder why the people of Ruthenia demanded better working conditions. Just watching them factory workers work in this miserable state had worn him down. Alexander stopped in his tracks as he gazed wistfully at the factory workers. "Your Majesty." The manager prompted, but his words didn't strike Alexander, who was in deep thought. This is nothing like his assembly line in his past life. There, it has basic standards such as ventilation systems, ergonomic designs, safety measures, and quality. The plant here is completely the opposite of his factory. Well, in the first place, the two shouldn't be compared because the era is different. Even though he had already proclaimed an act of guaranteeing the workers standard wages, better working conditions, reduced working hours, and health insurance, it still pales in comparison to what he has expected. "It's impressive to see that the factory workers can still work despite the condition," Christina observed. "Umu." Tiffania silently agreed. Still, Alexander was still in deep thought. The manager hailed him once more. This time, he finally got it. "Your Majesty?" His voice was loud and clear. Alexander came back to his senses. "Sorry, could you repeat that?" He apologized. The manager was about to repeat what he said, but Alexander waved his hand. "It's okay, I got it." He proceeded to walk down the stairs. As they walked down the stairs, Alexander asked, "This factory plant is really impressive, but, the employees here, they work in such miserable condition." "Oh, that's because..." The manager trailed off and took a deep breath. He didn't want to tell the truth. He knew that the factory workers worked much hard work under poor conditions, but it would be impossible to change it instantly. Reform takes time. "We're still adjusting to it, Your Majesty. As you can see, the workers are now wearing safety protection gear compared to last time when they wear none." Alexander was disappointed. He wanted to see real results, not just words. "We are doing our best to comply with your laws, Your Majesty." "Well, as long as I see progress, it's fine," Alexander said. "Good thing that the government is still an autocrat, where he can basically do whatever he wants. His word is the law. When he demands the factory owners to follow the new working standard, they shall comply. Though that privilege will soon expire once the new government is formed, where the law must undergo the legislative process." Speaking of the new government, due to him being absorbed in his work, there was a document stating that the date of the election for the representatives of the legislative branch will be in October. This gave the politicians 2 months for their campaign. "We'll meet the new standards next month," the manager promised. Alexander nodded in satisfaction. Industries such as this will be the backbone of the Ruthenia Empire. One of his many ideas to increase the economy of the empire is through modernization of the infrastructure, one of which is factories like the Kirov plant. Though he hasn't finalized the draft of his plan for the country yet, he's confident that it will make the Ruthenia Empire stronger economically. Thinking that something kindled inside Alexander, an urge to finalize the plan. He's been working for it since the 1st of August. He knows the economic situation of the empire is currently in dire straits thanks to the domestic policies of his predecessors, but that's not an excuse to keep him from doing his work. The trio resumed their tour around the factory plant. Compared to the hospital, this one doesn't look so sad. Probably due to the workers' demand for better work conditions. Visiting places like this gave him first-hand data that will help him make plans for the future. One flaw that he had noticed during the tour is that the factory is less advanced and it hasn't achieved full automation, which will increase productivity. Most of the equipment in the factory is outdated, so he'll have to come up with a new design to resolve this. He's been thinking of using modern technologies to increase the empire's economy. But to do so requires assembly lines to be renovated. This idea has been going on in his mind. Good thing that he visited this factory plant, confirming some of his assumptions. Alexander finished the tour and was preparing to head back to the palace. He learned a lot of things on this travel that will serve as a great reference for the plan he'll outline later in his office. I hope you enjoyed your visit here today, Your Majesty. The manager Vernley Bode then turned to his workers, instructing them to resume their work. Thank you for the warm reception. The group left the factory and headed back to the palace. The journey of the return trip is quite a silent one. All three are in deep thought about the visits to the hospital and the factory. Christina's thoughts about the tour, about the horrible working condition of the factory workers. How can they endure harsh conditions? Despite being the Grand Duchess of the Ruthenia Empire, seeing others suffer in such terrible conditions made her heart ache. Tiffany has also realized that as the princess of an empire, she seldomly leaves the palace, most of which are for formal occasions. She's not aware of the lives of the common people outside the palace, and she didn't care about them at all until she met them in person. The stories they bring show that the empire is not as perfect as she once thought. Meanwhile, Alexander's mind was filled with a plethora of ideas. Thinking what technology from his past world may benefit the empire? There are at least hundreds of them, but he'll stick to the revolutionary one and probably innovate some of the existing technologies. Creator's thoughts. Sorry I'm just diamond. Sorry I'm just diamond. Bonus chapter because of nothing. To thank me, give me your power stones. Chapter 21, Future Plans. As they returned to the palace, instead of getting rest, Alexander headed straight to his office to begin planning. Grabbing books from the bookshelves, Alexander placed them on his table and began reading them one by one. What he needed is basic information that would help him outline his plan for the economy. After 3 hours of reading, Alexander began writing out his plan in a book that he will use as a reference for the future operation. A question arose in his mind. How do you make the Empire of Ruthenia turn from a failing economy to an economic superpower? The first step has already been established by giving the people what they want. They want land? Fine, they can have land. They want a representative government? Fine, they can elect their representative in an upcoming election. The people are getting tired of war? Fine, let's send it. The people are hungry? Then let's import foods from another country until the agricultural sector stabilized. The working conditions of the masses are a complete mess. Okay, let's pass a law that will guarantee better working conditions. Simply put, if a country wants to get back on its feet, it has to listen to the people. Because they knew what was best and are completely aware of what was going on. The goal is to make sure that the population can have both a good standard of living while also having social and political rights. The second step is to know what strengths and weaknesses the empire has. To start off, the Ruthenia Empire has an immense size spanning 2 continents. With these, the empire has a lot of advantages such as access to huge mineral reserves that can be mined. Agriculture is also a major sector, but due to the famine that happened 5 years ago and the misgovernance of his predecessor, basically denying the peasants of land, it is producing less food, causing hunger and inflation. The Ruthenian Empire has a population of 160 million people. A huge percentage of those are middle class and peasants. They will be crucial in modernizing the empire and making it more globally competitive with the European powers. Now, what is the weakness of the empire aside from its internal affairs? The simple answer is geography. Ruthenia's massive territory has no significant warm water, ice-free ports with direct access to an ocean, even though it has 37,000 kilometers of coastline. Ruthenia is fundamentally limited in its maritime power simply because it has no easy way to access the world's ocean. For example, the St. Petersburg port. It's one of the important ports of the empire, but it freezes in winter. The Black Sea, however, does have ice-free ports like Novorossiysk and Sevastopol, but in order to get to the ocean, you need to pass through the Bosphorus Strait, a strait controlled by the Angkoran Empire, which has a strained relationship with the Ruthenia Empire because of the conflict in the past decades. On the Pacific side, the Vladivostok port also freezes in the winter. That's the reason why the empire was motivated to invade the kingdom of Choson, for its access to warm water, if not only for the Yamato Empire, a superpower in the region whom they lose in war and are now threatening their position in Choson. To summarize, in order for Ruthenia to access the world's ocean is through choke points like the Danish Strait and the Sea of Yamato. It's a headache. It's the reason why the Ruthenia Empire is pushing for an expansionist policy. Its recent invasion of the Persian kingdom with a strategic goal to control the port of Bandar Abbas for access to the Indian Ocean. According to history books, the empire lost because of the involvement of the Britannia Empire, believing that it'll threaten their interest in the Middle East. It's safe to say here that the Ruthenia Empire is a landlocked country. If Alexander wants to increase the economy through exports, he'll have access to those oceans for maritime trade. Which can also mean building a good relationship with the European powers, i.e. the Deutschland Empire and the Britannia Empire. Now that he knows the strength and weaknesses of the empire, Alexander moves on to the next step. Wide-scale modernization of the industries and infrastructures. These are the most crucial steps in making a country economically stronger. It includes road constructions, railways, bridges, water treatment plants, power plants, refineries, public transportation, schools and hospitals, and so on. The oil reserves, which is an important resource in an industrialized and modernized world. If the Ruthenian oil deposits' location are still the same, Alexander can exploit them. This endeavor will grant the massive able-bodied men a job, stimulating the economy in the process. Not only that, this is the part where he can utilize his modern knowledge in science and engineering. This means innovating the existing technologies and introducing new ones that are up to modern standards. For example, in automobiles, he noticed that the current automobile in this world doesn't have yet an air conditioning system or an in-heating system, power steering, coil spring suspension, and seat belts. If he were to design an automobile that has all of those features, guess what would happen? Every rich middle class and elites would want a piece of that, forcing the dominant automobile manufacturers to compete in order not to lose their customers. Not only in the field of automobiles, but Alexander also has plans to introduce new and improved home appliances such as heat pumps, televisions, and microwaves, to name a few. Thanks to his photographic memory, he can recall every article he read and has experiences with almost everything relating to engineering. He can do it as long as he has the money, resources, and tools. As for the military of the Ruthenian Empire, after a humiliating defeat from the Yamato Empire, Alexander is thinking of modernizing the military through military reforms that aim to improve the army's equipment, hardware, organization, training, and qualifications. If the information he read about Ruthenian army was correct, where the military of the empire is lagging behind the superpowers of Europa, then it's only natural to modernize the military as well. This endeavor would probably cause millions of money. According to the latest data, the Ruthenian GDP is top 5 in the world with a total GDP of $28,685,264,947. Adjusting for inflation, the total would be $490,900,500,800. Normally, this would be considered high, but there was a word that is not yet confirmed that there is corruption rampant in the government of the Ruthenian Empire. Misappropriations of funds, embezzlement where instead it's going to the public, it's going into the pockets of the corrupt politicians. As a supreme ruler of the nation, it's his responsibility to eliminate those. Those who steal from the public will be punished according to the laws. Now that it has already come to light in his mind, Alexander will investigate the corruption of the government. Corruption is cancer to society, and the only effective way to deal with it is to eliminate the root. Setting that aside, Alexander finally drafted his modernization plan in his notebook. It just has to turn into law so that it can be started. But this is different from the innovation and technologies he'll introduce to this world. It's not like the government should fund the creation of home appliances. That would be ridiculous and unacceptable. Alexander explored another idea. As the heir apparent to the throne, he receives 500,000 Ruthenian rubles every year, $34,119,450.61 in today's money. Not adding before he became an heir apparent, which is 200,000 Ruthenian rubles, $13,647,780.31. To calculate, Alexander received 200,000 every year starting when he reached the age of 1 until he became an heir apparent, which is 16. Then for each succeeding year, he'll receive 500,000 Ruthenian rubles. In total, he received 3,200,000 Ruthenian rubles. $320,722,835.60 in today's money. Now that's a lot of money. Most of it was donated to charities during the Great Famine, while some were used to sponsor construction projects such as churches, hospitals, and orphanages, to name a few. He can use the remaining money to build factories with the sole purpose of bringing modern technologies into reality. If all went according to plan, the economy of the empire will surely rise. Chapter 22, Royal Announcement. In one of the 460 rooms of the Winter Palace was a gym fitted with various gym equipment that can be dated back to the early 1930s. In the middle, there was a boxing ring currently being used by two figures exchanging punches at one another. They were Alexander Romanov, the future emperor of the Ruthenian Empire, and his head of security, Roland Makarov. Roland went with a straight hook and Alexander dodged it in anticipation. Seeing an opening, Alexander returned with a counter jab. But little did he know, Roland was expecting him to do it. Before Alexander could realize what just happened, he was countered by Roland's lead uppercut. Every nerve of his being tingled as he was about to imagine what would happen if that punch landed on his chin. In the heat of the moment, Roland's uppercut didn't go all the way through as he stopped his fist just a millimeter away from Alexander's chin. "It will knock you out, Your Majesty," Roland casually remarked. "I'm aware of that," Alexander replied, his voice slightly strained. "I think we should end this here." The two of them let go of their fighting stance after they agreed on a ceasefire. Alexander's wiped the sweat off his face with a towel as Roland is helping him remove his boxing gloves. "I'm impressed that you hold out longer than I expected, sire," Roland commented, seemingly impressed. "Are you sure you didn't receive formal training? Because from my perspective, you didn't fight like a prince who I thought would be amateur, but a fighter who already had experience." Alexander chuckled shyly. "You are praising me too much, Roland. I still have ways to go before I can reach your level." "You're too humble, Your Majesty." They laughed. The reason they sparred at one another was simply because of his exercise regimen. After meeting the ministers of each department in the morning, he'll have a lot of free time in the afternoon which he can use for training and exercise to boost the overall performance of his body. He's been doing it since he recovered from the injuries he had incurred from the assassination attempt on the royal family. He thought adding martial arts to his regimen would benefit him in the future in case Roland isn't around to protect him. Although this whole regimen is nothing new to him, since in his past life, he has been attending classes that teach self-defense, particularly mixed martial arts, boxing, and Krav Maga. most of which he does during his free time. Overall, the reason was him adding it to his exercise routine, and second, if he still has the skills he learned from his past life. It turns out that he still has it. It's the reason why Roland was impressed. As one who would normally think that a prince of a country would be an inexperienced fighter that would only last a second in a fight. "I'll look forward to our sparring match tomorrow," Alexander said. "Same goes here," Roland commented lightly. As they stepped out of the ring, a man in a Royal Imperial Guards uniform entered the room. "Your Majesty, you have a message from Prime Minister Sergei." He handed out a letter. "Thank you. I'll read it in my office," he said as he grabbed the letter. "Yes, sire." Alexander proceeded to the bathroom and changed into his formal attire, a red military jacket adorned with golden epaulettes, blue trousers, and black knee-high leather boots. Alexander Romanov went through the doors of the gym and down the corridor that led to his office. Alexander sat on his chair and took out a letter opener from a drawer and slit open the envelope. He took the letter out of the envelope and read what it says. It was news concerning the Yamato Empire accepting the terms of the Ruthenia Empire, effectively ending the war between them. The terms were the Ruthenia Empire pulling its forces out of the Kingdom of Shosan and recognizing its interest in the region. There were no war reparations and territorial concessions except in the region of Pusan, where they'll have to recede the territory to the Yamato Empire, leaving the Ruthenia Empire having no access to warm water ports in the Pacific region. They may have lost, but it was not a huge blow to the Empire except to the soldiers who died in the war. Now that the war has ended, Alexander can now focus on internal affairs. This defeat would surely make some of the people who were patriotic to the Empire disappointed. He has to promise them that this will not happen in his reign. He picked up the telephone and dialed a number. "Hello, this is His Majesty speaking." "Yes, I would like to speak with the Minister of War, Alexei Lavrov, please." "I'll wait." As the operator patched him through to the Minister of War, Alexander patiently waited in his seat, his eyes wandering around the room, looking at the gilded ceilings and exquisite furniture. "Good afternoon, Your Majesty, how can I help you?" "I want you to give me a list of soldiers who have participated in the war at the Far East. I want the names who were killed in action, missing, injured, and so on." "What do you need them for, sir?" "I want to honor their service to the Empire by giving them monetary support." "Oh, speaking of that, I'll also need the name of the soldiers' families who died in the war. Can you do that?" "Yes, Your Majesty, I'll gather the list as soon as I can." "Thank you, Minister, I'll be waiting." Alexander hung up the receiver. He reached for a paper and pen and began writing. He plans to share the news with the people of the Empire about the war. So, he's writing a speech. 2 hours later, Alexander reached out to the people through radio stations across the Empire to deliver his speech. "People of Ruthenia Empire, it is with a feeling of deepest sorrow that I announce to you that the war with the Yamato Empire has ended. I am sure that you are all aware of the terrible losses that have been suffered by the Empire. We have lost so much, so many brave young men who never returned to their families from the Far East. We have suffered more during these past years than we ever did during the war against the Empire of Yamato. The people of the Empire were steadfast and loyal to the fatherland. Some were able to regain their honor and pride during the war. Unfortunately, it was not enough to bring about a victory. But despite the many setbacks we suffered, there was one thing that was never lost: our will to carry on. This war has served me a lesson and realization, that the Ruthenia Empire is lagging behind the great powers of the world. So I'm determined that in my reign, I promise to you my people that we will rise up from the ashes and bring honor and glory to our country. We will return to the great empire that we once were. So I humbly request your continuous support and prayers for the soldiers who have fought valiantly in the Far East from this day forward, and wish that you will receive them warmly as they return to their homes. We may be defeated, but we are not broken. We will rise up, and this will be our rebirth. God is with us. The speech was played all over the country. From broadcasting from the radio stations to the news outlets that printed out flyers and newspapers. As Alexander gazed at the news he read, he was not surprised that some of the folks had a negative reaction to the speech. Some were disappointed about the news, some were lacking the heart to accept the news at the moment, some were frustrated, and some accepted the news with enthusiasm. It was quite expected for the people to react that way. Even though some wished for ending the war, the patriotism kindling in their hearts still outweigh their interest. In the coming days, Alexander pardoned the soldiers who deserted the army during the war, give reparations to the bereaved families, and rewarded the soldiers who have distinguished themselves in the war. For the soldiers who have died during the war, he held a state funeral for them. This is his way of acknowledging their service to the country. 2 weeks later, the Prime Minister visited him in his office. "Your Majesty, I have news to deliver to you," Sergei announced. "What is it?" Alexander asked. "To push forward your coronation, formally announcing you as the new and rightful emperor of the country, we recommend that you seek a queen," Sergei said flatly. "Yes, a queen. To be the consort of the emperor. A symbol of unity and hope for the people," Sergei continued. "Your father, before his passing, has already made arrangements for you. You will meet her on the coronation day of Prince Licht von Habsburg, the new king of the Austrian Empire." "When would that be?" "A week from now, Your Majesty." Alexander felt his stomach turn. Creator's thoughts. "Sorry I'm just diamond, sorry I'm just diamond. Hello guys, sorry for being AWOL in this past days, haha, well I crammed my school activities which leads to me not having a time to write. Sorry to those who were worried. We'll return to the original schedule of 1 chapter per day." Chapter 23, Trip to Vienna. 3 days before departing from St. Petersburg to Vienna, Alexander visited Anastasia in the palace garden. Arriving there, Alexander spotted Anna playing with a dog, running around the palace garden accompanied by a handful of servants. Alexander smiled as he watched the scene. She's getting better every day, resulting in her being lively all day. The cure he synthesized for her disease worked perfectly as he expected. Though it's still months away for the bacteria to be flushed out from her system. He approached Anna, but before he could call her, she spotted him from the distance. "Brother!" she called out, waving her hand, and ran towards him. Alexander beamed at the sight of his sister running toward him. He spread his arms out and waited for her arrival. She came to a halt in front of Alexander, who caught her and set her down on the ground. He then took a good look at her. She's grown taller than before, her hair has grown longer, her eyes have become brighter, and her body has become healthy. "Anna, you're getting prettier by the day." "Ha ha ha, I know right," she said, lightly laughing. "I'm not the same girl I was years ago. I'm not a sickly weakling anymore." "Indeed, you're not," Alexander said, patting Anna's head. "I'm glad you're healthy now." "Me too," she replied. "You came to visit me?" "Yes," Alexander answered as he pulled out a letter from his inside pocket. "I've received an invitation from the Austrian Empire. A coronation ceremony of the new king will be held 3 days from now. As the head of state of the Ruthenia Empire, I'm obligated to come. Also, the letter said that I can bring along one person with me." He looked at Anna in the eyes before continuing his statement. "Well, I could have picked Christina or Tiffany, but I remembered the time when I promised you I'll show you the city, right? Well, how about going abroad with me?" "Really?" Anna asked in disbelief. I mean of course I want to come with you, but isn't it better if Sister Christina is the one to go with you? I mean, she's elegant and graceful, compared to me, I'm just a kid." "Hey," Alexander said, staring at Anna worriedly. "Why would you think like that? You're my little sister, and so does Christina and Tiffany. To me you're all the same, equally beautiful, equally graceful, and equally elegant," Alexander said, looking at Anna in the eyes. "Besides, I know you like to leave the palace and visit the city. Are you going to let this opportunity slide?" "No." "Then it's settled, we'll leave at night." "Okay." Anna cheered happily as she jumped around in joy. As she jumped, her long silver swayed in a circle, moving gracefully as it reflects the light of the sun. Meanwhile, Alexander sighed inwardly. He is still not yet accustomed to acting like their big brother to them. He hoped he is doing it right. 5 days ago, his prime minister suggested him of finding a queen for the Ruthenia Empire to push forward his coronation. There was one candidate arranged by his father. She was a Deutsche princess, from the federated state of the Deutschland Empire, the Kingdom of Bavaria. Her name was Sophie. There was no available picture attached to her file, so he doesn't know what she looked like. Sergei said that they have met before during the wedding of his father, but his photographic memory only applies to Thomas Harrier, not to Alexander. There is a high chance that Alexander forgot her, leading Thomas clueless. Anyways, the idea of an arranged marriage between nations is not new to him. He's aware that it's common in this era. It didn't surprise him, after all. Thomas himself experienced having an arranged partner. It was for business purposes, to strengthen the ties of relationship between two companies. He didn't fall in love with her, as he only sees her as a tool to greatly benefit the company he has inherited. It'll be the same here. Just like in business, royal marriage between two nations is crucial as it binds the nation together, forming an inseparable alliance, and is of great importance in matters of diplomacy. As of right now, the Deutschland Empire has the most advanced technology and military in the world. Having diplomatic ties with that nation would surely benefit the Ruthenian Empire. Also, there was one thing he has to keep in mind. The princess he's arranged to wed is his second cousin. Basically, they are blood related. At night in the Winter Palace, Alexander and Anastasia were having a talk with Christina and Tiffany at the entrance while the servants is packing their luggage in the car. "I'll miss you, Anna," Christina said, embracing Anna. "I'll miss you too," Anna replied, hugging Christina back. "Don't worry, you'll be back in a few days, right?" Tiffany asked, smiling. "Of course," Anna answered, still in Christina's embrace. "I don't think we'll be back in a few days," Alexander interjected, somehow breaking the heartwarming mood around his sisters. "What?" Tiffany arched a brow. "Well, to begin with, I don't have an idea of how long would the coronation event will last. Second, I'll have to meet a certain someone who will also be attending the coronation. So we're talking about 1 or 2 weeks here," Alexander explained simply. "Then, who will run the country while you're gone?" Christina asked. "That would be my prime minister, obviously." "Okay then, have a safe trip," Christina said with a smile, waving her hand once. "You better take care of Anna, brother, or else." "Relax, Tiff," Alexander chuckled, "there's no need to be prickly about. I'll protect Anna with my life. Also, Roland is coming with us along with his team, so we're pretty much safe." "Okay then," Tiffany said, turning her head away. "Very well, we shall get going now. Our train is waiting. Goodbye." "Take care you too." Christina waved her hand as she watched them enter their car. A few minutes later, the car has left the palace and is currently driving through the streets of the capital. 10 minutes later, they arrived at St. Petersburg train station where the train that will take them to Vienna is waiting for them. The two headed inside the train car where they were met with the sparkling interior of the car. They gasped. The interior is giving a vibe of the Winter Palace. The ceiling is gilded, the furniture was expensive looking, and the floor was adorned with red velvet carpet, giving off a luxurious impression. As expected of the royal family of the Ruthenian Empire, everything they own looks magnificent and eye-catching. They then headed to their room, which is located at the far end of the car. The room is beautifully decorated, with a king-sized bed located at the side, with a separate bathroom in the corner. Anna jumped at the bed and landed softly on the soft mattresses. She then bounced a few times, enjoying the softness of the bed while Alexander understands her excitement over the bed as he, himself, would want to jump in there to feel the comfiness of the bed too. He checked the time on his pocket watch. The train will depart in 10 minutes. "Anna, you behave yourself during the trip, is that clear?" "Yes, big brother." "Okay, I'll be over in my office. If you need anything, you can ask the guards stationed at your door or call me. Is that understood?" Instead of acknowledging his order, Anna let out a bewildered gasp. "You have an office inside the train?" "Of course. I still have paperwork that needs to be done." "You sure are working too hard, brother? Are you sure you're getting enough rest?" Anna asked with a worried expression. "I'm fine. Don't worry, you're the one worrying too much." Alexander sighed, ruffled Anna's hair while leaving the room, and headed to his office. Anna turned to the window, looking out of it. As she was staring outside, her hands danced on her lap as she started humming an old Ruthenian lullaby. She looked at the lights passing by gently, mesmerized by the sight. As she kept on staring at the window, her eyes started to get heavy, so she decided to lay down on the bed. Closing her eyes, she drifted to sleep. The train finally left the station, heading towards the capital of the Austrian Empire, Vienna. Meanwhile, Alexander sits in his office, working on some papers. He looks like he was concentrating on his work, but his eyes were looking outside the window, watching the lights and scenery as they passed by. The trip will be a long one, as the journey will take them almost 2 days to reach Vienna. Chapter 24, Arriving at Vienna. The train arrived in Vienna to almost a whole parade of a soldier in the Austrian Empire's uniform, standing at attention at the train station. The station is huge and is much bigger than the one in St. Petersburg. A group of soldiers is standing in front of the train. They are wearing a red and black uniform while holding a flag with the emblazoned emblem of the Ruthenian Empire. Alexander and his siblings alighted the train along with their personal guards, the guards including Roland and his team. The soldiers, who stood at either side of the red carpet, held the flags high as an individual loomed earnestly towards them. He's 6 feet and 2 inches tall and has a broad physique. He is wearing an elaborate white military uniform adorned with a red sash and some burnished medals pinned on his chest. The man is in his late 30s. He has a relatively long face, a wide mouth, and a long straight nose. His eyes are blue and clear. His thin eyebrows are drawn together in a frown, giving him a serious and concentrated appearance. He had black hair, parted on the left side, with a fair complexion. "Your Imperial Highness, Your Highness," the man glanced at them as he formally said those words. "Welcome to Austrian Empire, my name is Licht von Habsburg, pleased to meet you." His voice carried power and magnificence, sounding grand and imposing. "Thank you, Your Excellency," Alexander returned with the same magnitude, living up to his title as the Imperial Prince. "This is my sister, Anastasia Romanov." Anna gathered up both ends of her skirt, bowing courteously upon his brother's introduction. "I'm honored that you personally came here to welcome us." Licht furrowed his brows as his gaze flickered to the young lady. Anna, he remembered that name. Isn't she the one who got afflicted with tuberculosis? Before Alexander could answer his query, Anna stepped in and answered his curiosity right away. "Indeed, Your Excellency, but I'm fine now. Brother helped me, GHGHHH." Suddenly, Alexander gagged Anna with his hand, stopping her from speaking. "Oh my, I apologize, my sister doesn't know the customs yet, Yes, it's not like she recovered completely from the disease, her symptoms just lightened up thanks to the therapy," he reasoned embarrassingly, lying through his teeth as he hid his achievement of developing an incurable disease of this era. Anna let out a muffled tone as she tries to speak, but Alexander won't let her. This act confounded the Prince of Austria, who just cocked his head to the side. Licht furrowed his brow, not convinced by the young man's explanation. "In any case, I'm glad she's doing well now. Thank you, Your Excellency." Alexander bowed down again, thanking him. Licht stared at Alexander and looked at him up and down as he observed the young man. Too young was his first impression of him. To think that he'll become the emperor of the world's largest country in the world at the age of 19 is something that is unheard of unless something happened. He was well versed in the news about his neighbors. Alexander Romanov was on a trip along with the late emperor and empress, then met with a tragic fate. An assassination that took the life of his mother and father. Alexander survived, making him the de facto ruler of the Ruthenian Empire. A huge responsibility was bestowed on his young shoulders. He doesn't know whether he'll be able to handle the pressure, as he probably still doesn't know what it means to be a ruler of a country. Nevertheless, he is grateful that the head of state of the Ruthenian Empire visited Austria for his coronation tomorrow. Licht cleared his throat before speaking. "I've already prepared accommodation for the both of you. I hope it is to your satisfaction." "Of course. Thank you very much for your generosity and hospitality," Alexander replied gratefully as he bowed down again and then turned to the man standing on his right. "Roland, we're heading out. Are our things ready?" "Yes, Your Highness," Roland answered as he bowed down. "All are accounted for." "Then let's get going," Alexander motioned for Anna to get up and walked towards Licht. "Lead the way, Your Excellency." As they were walking towards the exit of the train station, Licht led them towards the cars awaiting them. A few soldiers were holding flags of the Ruthenia Empire on the right, while on the other side, an Austrian flag. "What a warm reception," he commented under his breath. They entered the car and sat on the seats and the doors were immediately closed behind them. "Let's go," Licht ordered the driver. On the other hand, Alexander had his eyes closed as he leaned back in his seat. His hand tapped the armrest as he contemplated his situation. Truth be told, he doesn't want to visit foreign countries yet, as he would like to focus more on domestic affairs. But since it has something to do with his own coronation, where he will have to make contact with his future wife, takes precedence over everything else. There's a tradition in Ruthenia Empire that the heir apparent can't ascend the throne without his queen. So in order to legitimize his position and solidify the authority of his rule, he must opt for marriage. A sigh escaped his mouth as he started to relax. He looked to his right where Anna's head was pressing against his shoulder. Her eyes closed as she fell asleep. One thing he learned about Anna is that she likes to sleep. Alexander didn't mind her sleeping on his shoulder. In fact, he finds it endearing. Inside the vehicle, Prince Licht was seated right in front of them, facing them as he watched a rather affectionate scene unfolding right in front of him. "Before I forgot, Your Highness, where are you taking us?" Alexander started a conversation. "We're heading to Grand Hotel Wien, where you'll be staying while you're in Austria," he answered. "It's the finest hotel in this area. I can assure you, you'll love it." "I'm glad to hear that," Alexander chuckled and continued. "I do have a gift for your ascension to the throne. Have you heard of Fabergé egg?" "Yes, I do." "Are those the egg you used where you keep a miniaturized object inside?" "That's the idea." "Interesting," Licht replied as he straightened his back on his seat. "I can't wait to see what it contains tomorrow. Are there any places you'd like to visit while you're here in Austria?" Alexander hummed in thought. "I would like to see the Schönbrunn Palace, the Hofburg, the Ring Road, basically every palace and churches Vienna has." "That's great. I can have it arranged for you," Licht nodded. "For our residence, I'll be the one to tour you around in exchange that you'll tour me around the Winter Palace when I visit it in the future." "You'll visit Ruthenia?" "Of course, in your coronation." "Ah, I see. Speaking of coronation, I don't have one yet." "Why is it?" Licht cocked his head to the side. "Well, it seems that I have to fulfill a prerequisite before I can claim the throne." "Prerequisite?" Licht repeated. He doesn't know where Alexander is heading here. "I have to find a queen," Alexander answered candidly. "Oh." Licht's mouth dropped slightly agape as he realized Alexander's meaning. "And where is this queen live?" "She's from the Kingdom of Bavaria. She's expected to attend your coronation, so there is a chance for me to meet her tomorrow." "Kingdom of Bavaria?" Licht hummed in thought. "I do remember that there will be a representative from the Kingdom of Bavaria who will attend my coronation. What's her name?" "Her name is Sophie." "Sophie?" Licht repeated, and his curiosity piqued. "I don't believe we have met, so I apologize I can't help you here." "It's okay," Alexander let out a chuckle. "I'll just meet her tomorrow." He paused for a moment before continuing. "I admit, I'm kind of nervous because I don't know what she looks like. I can't say much, but I hope you two get along. Who knows, maybe you'll like her." "I hope so too," Alexander told a lie. He never intends to fall in love with some political tool. "Anyways, how's the home front? I heard that Ruthenia is in a bad shape. Losing the war, worker strikes." "Oh wait, you did some reforms." "Yeah, I have to give the people something to appease them. My father left me a country that is in shambles. I can't say I'm not overwhelmed by what I see, but I'm grateful that the people are giving me a chance for redemption." "I'm happy to hear that. After all, where you lead, others follow. I do hear about your reforms though. I must say, you're quite a progressive and liberal man. I'm looking forward to your country's recovery." After having a long chat, they finally arrived at the hotel. "Well, we're here," Licht announced. Alexander shook Anna's arm gently as he tries to wake her up. "Anna," he said softly. "We're here." "Huh?" Anna murmured sleepily and she slowly opened her eyes. "Oh, we're here." She looked outside the window and saw a group of people waiting for them outside the hotel. Grand Hotel Wien is the finest hotel in Vienna. It's a grand building built in the Baroque style. It had a total of 200 rooms. Alexander and Anna exited the car and the soldiers gave a salute as the couple walked toward the hotel's entrance. Both tilted their head upwards, gazing at the huge building of the hotel. It's a majestic design that gave an impression of royalty. "So this is where we'll be staying," Alexander commented. His trip to Vienna had just begun. Creator's thoughts. "Sorry I'm just Diamond, sorry I'm just Diamond. A friend of mine sent me a private message, a classmate, about my story saying that when would I focus on developing the empire and introducing modern tech. Well, to answer that I have to let you know that I'm also excited to write that part, but it'll take chapters to get there. But I can assure you, we'll get there soon. Probably in volume 2. So stay tuned. I want to take things slow, so I hope you don't get bored. Wait, and I promise you, it'll be worth it." Chapter 25, Day before the coronation. The night sky was filled with stars as the moon shines brightly that it illuminates the night sky. The weather in Vienna was cold, but it was not too cold as Alexander and Anna strolled around the nearby area of the hotel. "So, what do you think?" Alexander asked. Anna's hand was in Alexander's. Her gaze was fixated on the stars and the moon. While the coronation will be held tomorrow, Alexander figured that it would be best to explore the capital city of the Austrian Empire to pass the time. Their first destination was the Ring Road. First, they'll have to obtain cash for their trip. As prudent as Alexander would be, he already ordered Roland, his chief of security, to go to a bank that offers exchange service to withdraw the local money in Austria. Roland, who was walking behind the two all the time, approached Alexander and handed him the money. However, Alexander raised his hand, stopping him. "You hold it," he simply ordered. "Understood." The three entered the car and began to move towards the Ring Road. As they passed by several buildings and shops, Alexander had to admit that the capital city was one of the most beautiful cities he had ever seen. The streetlights gave off a bright yellow glow that illuminated the corner of the street they were on. The night sky was decorated with glittering stars, and the moon was glowing in full radiance as it shined over the city. The architecture of the buildings and shops was a mix of neoclassical and Baroque designs that exude a sense of royalty with their majestic and splendid design. As Alexander admired the view, he realized the car stopped. "We're here," the chauffeur declared. "I see," Alexander replied as he gazed into the brightly lit street filled with people, making the city lively and vibrant. "So this is the Ring Road, huh?" Alexander commented. It was much livelier than what he had seen from his capital, the St. Petersburg. The Ringstrasse, or commonly known as the Ring Road. Alexander doesn't know much about the history of the city, but years ago, ramparts stood here. Following their demolition and massive construction effort, it became the main road. From the car, he could see remnants of rubbles on some part of the city. Vienna's State Opera, the City Hall Rathaus, the Parliament Building, museums, library, palaces, and any other major public institution are all built around the ring. Alexander and Anna exited the car. The soldiers who were guarding the car saluted to acknowledge their presence. Alexander and Anna gazed at each other and then looked at the surroundings. "So, shall we go in?" Alexander asked. Anna nodded in reply. Holding hands, Alexander and Anna stepped into the Ring Road. As they entered the street, they were greeted by well-lit shops on both sides of the street. "So which one do we go to first?" Alexander asked. How about there?" She pointed at the jewelry shop at the corner of the street. "Okay then, I guess," Alexander acknowledged. They entered the shop. A bell tinkled overhead as they entered, and they were greeted by a short and balding man who wore thin-rimmed spectacles. The inside of the shop was decorated using luxurious carpets and shelves filled with elegant and classy jewelry. A half-moon chandelier hung from the roof, diffusing warm light into the dim space. Behind a small counter on the far side of the room, displays showed off expensive rings, necklaces, and bracelets of silver and white gold. "How can I help you today?" the man asked in a Deutsch language. Alexander didn't get it at first, but the moment he focuses his mind on those words, new information flooded his brain. It turns out that Alexander can speak 4 languages: English, Deutsch, Ruthenia, and French. Thomas was impressed by this new information after knowing in the past that Alexander is a slacker. "We're going to browse around first, we'll let you know if we need anything," Alexander replied in Deutsch. "Okay then, let me know if you need any help," the old man smiled back. Meanwhile, Anna was staring at his brother, seemingly impressed. "What's the matter?" Alexander spoke back in Ruthenian. "No, nothing at all. I was just surprised that you can speak Deutsch, brother. It's a skill that an heir apparent must have after all, especially in diplomacy," Alexander replied back. "I guess," Anna shrugged. "Anyway, choose something you want and let me know, so that we can hand it to the clerk for purchase." "Okay." Anna strolled around the store while she looked at the jewelry displayed on the glass display. Then her eyes stopped on a barrette butterfly clip that caught her attention. Alexander and Roland followed the princess as they noticed her staring at the jewelry piece. "You like it?" Anna nodded. Alexander approached the center counter and handed the barrette to the clerk. "Can I have this one PLS?" "That'll be 1,192 kroner." Alexander beckoned Roland to come. "Pay the price." Roland nodded and pulled out the money he exchanged earlier. Then, he handed the exact amount to the clerk. Seeing that they've bought it, Anna beamed with delight. "Thank you, brother." "It's nothing, it's probably cheap anyway," Alexander assured. "Want me to put it on your hair?" Anna nodded happily as she approached her brother. Alexander then placed the butterfly clip on her hair. It suited her well as it matched her silver hair. Finishing their business in the jewelry store, they left the store with Anna's hand holding Alexander's. As they strolled through the busy street, Alexander noticed a hot dog standing by the corner of the street. The smell of the sausage wafted through the air, making his stomach rumble. "You want to eat?" he asked Anna. "Sure," Anna smiled back. The two approached the stand. As always, Roland follows their tracks. "Roland, give me some money." Roland pulled out a wallet and handed it to his boss. "Excuse me, sir. 3 kroner, please." While waiting for the order, Anna lightly tugs Alexander's sleeve, her face wearing a curious expression. "What's wrong?" Brother, where are the seats?" "There's none." "Eh? How do we suppose to eat it? I can't see them using forks or knives." "We eat it while standing," Alexander gave an obvious answer. Anna got more confused. Her lack of experience in the outside world made her ignorant of the simplest of things. How do we do it?" "Don't worry, your highness, let me demonstrate it for you." Roland stepped in with a hot dog bun in his hand. "Hold it by the bun, open your mouth wide, and take a bite." Roland demonstrated, chewing the food and swallowing it down. Anna tried it as Roland instructed. She leaned over, opened her mouth, and bit the bun. She chewed it and swallowed the food. "It's delicious," Anna remarked happily. There was a ketchup stain on her mouth. Alexander asked for a tissue and used it to wipe off Anna's mouth. "I guess that's for today in Ring Road. How about we visit the Hofburg Palace?" Alexander asked. "Sure," Anna agreed. "Roland, is the car ready?" "Yes, sire." "Then let's go." 10 minutes later, Alexander, Anna, and Roland arrived at the Hofburg Palace. Parking the car just at the side of the street, the three exited the car and looked over to the palace looming in the distance. The Hofburg Palace, located in central Vienna, was the official residence of the royal family of the Austrian Empire. The black and yellow Austrian flag rippled in the wind on the balcony of the palace. Soaring high into the sky, the flag stood tall over the roof, waving in the wind. The palace is as tall and majestic as the Winter Palace. Truly astonishing. "So this is where Prince Licht lives, right? I wonder if he's inside," Anna commented. "He must be preparing for his coronation tomorrow," Alexander said. "When will be your coronation, brother?" "That's still undetermined, but I believe it'll happen soon." "Oh," Anna said. "I can't wait." Alexander smiled back, reminiscing their journey back to the Ring Road. He admits that the way of living is starkly different from the Ruthenia Empire. The Austria is vibrant and lively while the Ruthenia is depressing and listless. When he get back to Ruthenia Empire, he swore that he'll change the very empire itself and make it the most powerful nation in the world.